Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. I'm sitting down today with Monica Nevi. Monica's a comedian that's going to be performing at the Upper Left Comedy Festival, which is in Seattle of all places. And you got everyone that listens to the show knows how much I love Seattle. No, just kidding. April 25th to the 27th of 2024. If you're listening to this afterwards, well, you missed the festival, but let's listen to what Monica has to say. So Monica, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Thank you for having me.
So you make your living traveling around the country, but before you started being a comedian, tell us about young Monica.
Young Monica. Oh.
Well, not that you're old. I don't mean it's got that.
Well,
sorry.
It's so dark on this camera for a reason. I grew up in Washington, Washingtonian for sure, from Renton originally. Proud of it. I was an athlete, played basketball all the way through college, and I got hurt. And then I had been writing jokes. I loved stand-up. My family's very funny. We always watched a lot of comedies. My grandparents would show me like Marx Brothers and W.C. Fields and stuff like that. So I always loved comedy and loved stand-up. And so in college, I had gotten hurt and decided that was the perfect time to do the other thing that people love for women to do and be stand-up comedy. So.
What was the injury?
I broke my ankle and then I played on it. We didn't know it was broken, so that added a lot of complications to it. So I redshirted my freshman year at Seattle University and then played my sophomore year, but it was just more of a significant injury than we knew and gave me a lot of problems. So didn't play my junior and senior year, stayed with the team, my degrees in sports and exercise science. But in January of my junior year in college is when I did my very first open mic. Okay.
And where was that at?
It was at Laughs in Kirkland, which is now in Seattle. But which I'm sure as you go, everything changes. You're like, I started at this place. And they're like, that's not a place anymore. But Laughs is still a place at least, but just in the U district now.
Okay. And when we talked on the phone earlier, I asked you a question on which I'm going to repeat here now. And I was really surprised by your answer, which was, I kind of thought nothing personal. I just think that anytime somebody stands up for the first time, that it's gotta be rough. And you told me it went really well. So let's walk through that. I mean, walk me through, as a terrified person who can't speak to a room of people. I can talk to you like this all day long, but put me with live people and like 3 people in a room and I'm very quiet. What was it like? Now
on paper, none of it makes sense because I too am actually pretty shy. In school, when I had to do, reports or anything, I dreaded it. I still have a pretty hard time being serious in front of a lot of people. I've had to do a couple of panels, or I did a documentary series and I did a premiere for it and was sincerely talking about the project and felt so uncomfortable because no one was laughing. And I'm like, yeah, they're not supposed to. But so that was always how I felt, was I didn't really like talking in front of people. And then, so I was overanalyzing how to do this. I was Googling for probably 2 years. How do you start stand-up? How do you do stand-up? What do you do? And they're like, go to an open mic. This is what you do. You sign up, all this stuff. And so I actually went and watched an open mic at Laughs just to see. And I didn't know this, and now I know, but there's something called resolution comics, which is people who make it their New Year's resolution to start stand-up, so that a lot of new people do it in January because that's
just like going to the gym.
Yeah, exactly. The gym and the open mics are busier. If you want to continue drinking as heavily as you are, you can do stand-up instead of go to the gym. But so there's also a really good audience during that time because you're supposed to bring audience members when you do your first few open mics. So it's a great full room, which is not how open mics normally are. So the first one I do is in January. I've also been, when I Googled, it says have 3 to 5 minutes of jokes ready. And so I had that pretty much set what I was going to do for a year. I mean, I was, practicing in the shower, do it in the mirror. I was, this is like, so I really like thought about it for probably way too long. Now knowing what an open mic is and what stand-up is, I probably put way too much on it, but I was just really ready for it. And it was a really good audience. I think that's why.
Do you remember the first joke you told?
I don't think I remember.
Is it because it was traumatic and you blocked it out? Or
there's a lot of stuff in the first couple of years where you're like, I would never say that. And you're a little bit embarrassed, but I don't really remember them. So there's one joke that I did on the first open mic I ever did that is actually on my first album. So I kept doing it, like it was a good enough joke. And I think that's why, you got a good closer. It's only 3 minutes. That's probably part of it. But I had a joke about the flashing lights on bicycles. Okay. Like bicyclists riding that would be flashing. And it was something like, it would keep you safe if everyone coming the other way is having a seizure. Just like I had a bit that I've had like dark stuff that I don't really talk about now that I was doing in the first year. Because when you first start stand up, you're like, oh, nobody's talking about this, which everyone is. What are you talking about? So I had a few of those that I'm like, just would cringe now. Maybe not in the first open mic, but in the first year at least, where you're like, oh, don't say that,
So you did your first open mic, and you were. Well, let's walk through. So for people who are listening that may want to make a resolution to be a stand-up comedian next year for 2025. Give me an example of something that all new potential comics need to know. Like is there maybe not a secret because you guys want to keep those closely guarded. I'm not asking you to be a magician and reveal how you cut the lady in half type thing, but what's a good tip that an aspiring comic should know that they probably can't Google?
Well, I think from a technique standpoint, move the mic stand out of your face. If people are distracted by something else going on stage, then they won't really listen to you. The other thing is comedy is seen as kind of like, oh, this is fun. I can drink while I'm doing it. And also, if you want the people who are running the open mic or other comics or anything, like be professional, treat people nice. Relationships are still really important. And I know a ton of people who've gotten a lot of opportunities that they did not deserve because they're just nice to people or, they show up or whatever. You don't even really have to be that talented to do some stuff and stand up. So treat people nicely and professionally. And, that's the thing, you can drink. So don't get too drunk and go on stage. It never goes well. Those types of things.
Yeah, probably not. That's probably real solid advice. Well, I'm really nervous. Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
Just deal with it. Okay. And so how many years have you been a full-time comedian?
Full-time has been 9 years, I think. Okay. And then I started 13 years ago.
Okay. So it took you about 4 years of, I'll call it apprenticeship. How's that?
Sure.
Working another job, making ends meet elsewhere, doing comedy shows as you could, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So you've been a full-time professional comedian for 9 years. Where's the coolest comedy club that you've ever played in? Because we're Washington State, we're going to have to ask you that. It's very specifically. What's the coolest club you ever played in Washington State?
In Washington State. Okay. The coolest comedy club I've ever played in Washington State. This is hard. Now I feel like I'm choosing. I'm going to start a turf war.
No. I'm going to give you an out in a second. I'll spoil that, but I'll give you an out in a second.
I'll say the club that I think was perfect. The setup, so great for comedy. It has the dark basement, brick walls, low ceiling, feels a little dirty, but you're also like, this is so fun. And it's because of the setup of the room. It could be 30 people and sounding really good, or it could be 150 and be electric, but either way, you're still going to have a fun show. And it was the Comedy Underground that was in Pioneer Square under a bar called Swannie's. And it was there for like 35 years. and then didn't make it through the
pandemic. So as a performer, that's kind of the thing you're looking for, is a room that if it's not crowded, it's still good energy. Mm-hmm. If it's crowded, it's like you use the word electric.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of my analogy is kind of similar to bands. They, you know, you want to, you know, if you're on stage with 30 people in a room that holds 500, that could be a great show, but it wasn't fun.
Right. It definitely feels different. Well, and then so right. like high ceilings, the laughter kind of goes up, you know, you don't hear it as well. And different things. Yeah. A bigger room that isn't as full, you feel it a lot more than because that room fit, I think, 150 people, which is a good amount. Most clubs fit between 250 and like 600. But
wow.
So if you have 50 people in a 250 room, that feels way different than 50 people in 150.
Right. Where's your favorite venue that you've played so far anywhere? As for you as a performer, like you're like, this is a really cool space for me.
Yeah. It's just hard to choose because I do have fun, you know, a lot of places.
Sure.
But I think I think a lot of comics would agree with me on this. There's a club in Denver called Comedy Works, and it is just perfect. It's like the building is great for it. Another like basement. It's not even brick, of course, because it's Colorado, so it's like stone. And then they've like trained these audiences to, you know, they're just great comedy audiences. They laugh really loud. I mean, to the point where like you're ready. You're like, okay, here's my whatever 45-minute set. And you only get to a half an hour of it because they're laughing so hard and so long. I mean, you have to really plan around how good they are. But it has a lot to do with the staff and how they run it and all that stuff. But it's really just, I mean, it's incredible to work out.
And is there a venue that you want to play that you haven't played?
There's a lot of them. But I've done stuff.
If I could grant you one wish and say you can be the headliner here, where would that be? I wasn't playing.
This isn't the great,
so you could be unprepared.
Yeah,
it's all good.
I'm not. This isn't a great. Why am I doing some Colorado stuff? But I've seen performances at Red Rocks in Colorado, and I always thought like that would be so cool. Even though as far as it being like set up for comedy is not the best, but it's such a cool space. It would be so cool to be there and have it be like full.
I didn't know. Do they do comedy at Red Rocks?
They do. They do sometimes. Okay. There's like a summer series where they like do comedy and then a movie or something. Cool. And then some people, I think, you know, bigger people will do it sometimes. I do think it's just because it's like such a cool place to perform. I don't think it's like set up the best or anything, but everybody's like, yeah, I want to
Red Rocks.
Draw a full crowd in the mountains that are red and beautiful in this natural amphitheater or whatever. So yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll go back to your pre-pro days when you were a starving amateur. How's that?
Yeah. I will never forget.
How did the family take it?
My parents. You know, my parents were really supportive in not like, oh my gosh, this is the best idea you've ever had. This is going to go great, you know, but definitely like, we support you on whatever you do. You know, they were basketball parents before then. So they were used to traveling and watching me play everywhere and really good. They were always, I don't think my mom missed a game ever.
Wow.
And maybe my dad only a couple. I mean, they're really there and they're basketball experts still because, you know, they're still fans. And so they treated comedy kind of similarly. When I first started, like my mom would come to open mics and stuff, or she'd text me and be like, oh, I just, you know, I have to work tomorrow, so I can't make it to your show. And I'm like, this is not a good show. You don't need to be at every, you know, I'm not playing a different team. It's, you know, so they were good about it, but they were very adamant that I needed to finish my degree. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I chose to quit my day job, they were, I think they, you know, they never tried to like talk me out of it or anything. And so I don't know if they were like, it's not excitement or anything. I just think they were like, we support you, whatever you choose, which is not often the story with stand-up comics. So I got pretty lucky there. And now they're like, so they're very proud of me and so into it. And they, you know, when I'm filming a special, they come and, yeah, it's, I got very lucky in that regard, I think, as far as,
okay.
But yeah, then I do have a degree, so I did what they said.
So you've got a degree. All right. And I could joke that what you do for a living has nothing to do with your degree.
Yeah,
just like most of us.
It doesn't. But, well, I use my degree to answer my family's questions about their injuries. So.
Okay. Yeah. That's how you. Okay.
I will say, I want to mention very quickly that the one person who I think is most interested in my career, that at first was probably worried, but he just is just astonished, I think, about the traveling and the being alone and the you know, you're a tortured artist, is my grandfather. He's like, he has this whole thing about like, he did whatever he was supposed to do. You know, he was a good athlete, and they were like, do you want to play college football? And he said, sure. You know, and then that college was like, oh, this is really good for teaching. Do you want to be a teacher? And he was like, sure. You know, and then he goes on to get his doctorate and stuff, and he was an educator. And then, you know, and American Dream, they got married, knew each other in high school, you know, high school sweethearts, 2 kids, good job, whatever. And now he's like so interested in not doing that. Like, he's like, wants to know what I'm doing, where I'm at. He thinks they're real risks that I've taken, but he likes that, you know, like and he's the smartest person I know. I mean, he's over analytical to a flaw, but just very smart. And so he's so interested, like he wants to learn more about it and see it and stuff. And it does keep it in perspective for me sometimes that like, yeah, it is a weird thing to do, and it's different, and it's not like most jobs, and my life is different, and that can be really cool.
Right. Well, that's awesome though, because, you know, it sounds like he went the kind of the path that a lot of people are my parents' generation, grandparents, you know, they, you know, I remember the advice my grandfather gave me was to get a union job, save 10% of my pay, and retire when I was 55.
Yeah.
And that worked for him, but it doesn't work in today's world.
No.
And so he always struggled when I was self-employed. He just couldn't, like, it was something he never could wrap his head around, so to speak. So he was always, you know, really kind of like, you should get a job.
That makes sense. It's hard. You're like, I have a job. It's harder to, when people don't know like the quantitative parts of doing self-employment, because it does vary. So I think, you know, if you go, oh, I'm a teacher, you go, yep, they normally make between this much and this much, and that's, you know, whatever. For me, I mean, my parents have asked me specifically numbers.
How much do you make?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because they want to know, can I feel comfortable or not? You know, in my
so do you tell them that you out earn Jerry Seinfeld? Is that just what you say? I have more wealth than Jerry.
They're making great money. This is a fantastic industry to get into. You know, that's what I know.
I'm sure that, you know, there's comedians just like any like musicians and artists. You know, there's people like Jerry Seinfeld who have amassed great wealth, and then there's comedians who are very funny and who are one bad gig away from bankruptcy. Yeah. And it, you know, and that's just the nature of being creative, I think, too.
Absolutely. You know? Yeah, that's a good point. It's an interesting, like, there are a lot, or at least there used to be a lot of like paying your dues and going through, like, comedians, and I'm sure musicians and other type of artists do this too, but you're like, oh, I'm supposed to like suffer in the beginning of this. And I kind of still believe that you should a little bit, but because that's when you're funny. But there's parts like I couldn't, with the life I have now, I couldn't choose to start doing stand-up now. It was, I was in a place where it was like, I wasn't tied to anything. When I quit my job, I went on the road for 3 months without living anywhere. I mean, it was, and we weren't making very much at all. When I lived in Los Angeles, my budgeting was so much less than it is now. There's just no way I could do it now. And so part of it is like being in the place to be able to do the suffering. And then,
you're in Tacoma, so you can suffer in Tacoma.
That's why I moved here. Tortured artist, I can do that.
Tortured artist. Well, so I'm going to ask you some specific questions about 2023, because that was the last full year. As we record this, it's April of 2024. So in 2023, how many gigs did you perform?
I used to like count them up at the end of the year.
And then how many nights were you on the road?
Yeah. So
Ish.
Last year was pretty consistently working. Sometimes I've never taken a break, but I will like do more like every other week. I don't kind of, or I'll take, but we had an expensive year. We got married the year before, which was, we paid for a lot of it ourselves. And then we had some like family emergency type stuff that, you don't plan for, but you have to pay for it. And so we did. But that for me, and you know this, just means you have to work more. I mean, that's all it comes down to. And so it was pretty busy, and I filmed a special at the end of November last year. And so I was doing like open mics and stuff. So I was probably performing more than I would have maybe the year before. But on average, I perform, well, let's say 5 shows a week.
Okay.
Potentially 3 to 5 nights a week.
Okay.
And was able to take off maybe 3 weeks, like 3 weekends,
So you did somewhere between 200 and 250 shows, probably.
That sounds about right.
Okay. And you didn't know that there was going to be something like you're filling out like a job application. How many cities did you perform in? I mean, how, ish, once again,
probably 40.
40 cities?
Yeah.
Okay. So and is that all just in the US, or did you do Canada or Mexico or anywhere exotic? Like,
Everything was in the US the past couple of years. I did England in 2018, but that's the last time I've like been out. Obviously there was complications for a little bit. Next year I would like to do like a full Canadian tour in 2025. Because I haven't legally been allowed to go there in like 10 years. Okay. So I was like, now I'm allowed to go back. Let's do a whole tour. So that'll be fun. But yeah, so England's kind of the only other place that I've done stuff besides the US. Okay. But I've been everywhere in the US that you would never go on purpose. I mean, they're, whatever little city in between, or you got to take 3 flights to get there, whatever.
Well, I mean, if we're being honest, you grew up in Renton and you live in Tacoma. I mean, there's let's just.
And when I'm on the road, I say I'm from Seattle because no one knows anything about those places. So yeah.
Nobody, yeah. If you said Renton, people would look at you like, and they might know Tacoma just because it's Seattle, Tacoma, but we don't really. It's Kent and Renton. Nobody knows what that is.
Yeah, but then I say Seattle, and they go, "Oh, we're in Seattle." I go, "Actually, Tacoma." Like that's
right.
Because if they know enough to be like, where in Seattle, they know, a neighborhood or something, then I'm like, okay, yeah, but
is that the knee-jerk reaction people have anywhere? Like, where are you from? Boston. Oh, we're in Boston. I wouldn't know a single neighborhood in Boston. They could make something up, and I go, oh, okay.
People could tell me I'm from Connecticut. I'd be like, that's good enough. I don't know, like, I don't know, cities or whatever. Close enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
From Washington State. I do have to clarify Washington State all the time because people think of DC when we say it, and so it's like, yeah.
So, we run the website Explore Washington State. At least once a month, I get an email inquiring about something in Washington, D.C.
See, that's like, I flew out of D.C. on Sunday.
It baffles me, though. Yeah. People go, hey, can you get us tickets to the Lincoln Memorial?
You don't want to see the one here.
Yeah, come. I can get you hooked up at the Space Needle, maybe. But, anyway. So let's talk about the Upper Left Festival, because you're performing, and where is it being held at? Because there's a couple of clubs in the Seattle area, correct?
Yeah, a couple of clubs. It's interesting. So, not to keep bringing it up, but COVID had an effect on venues, and a lot of things and clubs changed in Seattle because of that. And so, the Crocodile is like a really well-known, or was like a really well-known rock club. Some of our more popular bands, performed there early in their careers or whatever. And so during COVID, I mean, right afterwards, they actually moved the Crocodile into a different building that has now 3 separate stages. And so it has like a really big one up top, and then kind of a medium size in the middle. And then they have this place called the Hereafter, which is now pretty much a comedy club. And it fits like 100 seats, and it's great. I really like it there. So that's one of the venues, and I'll be there on Saturday doing some shows, and also my podcast. My podcast is going to be the first live one we've ever done. We're going to do there in the hereafter.
Very cool.
Yeah, and some other venues, and Belltown seems to be like kind of the place. Here we go. So we got like the Jewel Box Theater at the Rendezvous, which is a great little like 65 seat theater. The Hereafter, they had the Grotto, which is at the Rendezvous too, which is like 45 seat room, which is really fun. This is the thing about a festival. It's like the whole point of it is you can see so much comedy in one, concentrated time. So then you have all these different types of shows, and you can go from one, that's, buy a pass so that you can go from one to the next and all that stuff. And it's really fun for us. It's like, I get to see people when you're headlining, you don't see each other because I'm the headliner on this show, you're the headliner on that show. We're not going to work together as often. And so festivals are so fun because you get to see other headliners you don't get to watch or work with or hang out with. And so it's kind of like, summer camp for comics where you get to do activities during the day, and then you go and do your shows, and then you can go watch your friends and hang out. And I think as a comedy fan, festivals are such a fun time because I think we're having more, not that we're not always having fun, but we're having more fun at festivals than we are. So you get to see something you're probably not going to get to see if you go and see someone at a theater or an arena or whatever. It's going to be a cool, more intimate experience with the comics you like. So yeah, it seems like kind of all over Belltown in Seattle.
Yeah, so and there's a large number, and we can't do justice to all. I'll put a link in the show notes for people, but we can't do justice to all the other comedians, and they're coming from all around the United States. Yeah. It's not just not that Washington comics are bad, but it's people that you're not necessarily going to always see at an open mic.
Yeah, just around town. Yeah, absolutely. Which is that's the most exciting part about having a festival. So we have a big competition in Seattle, but we don't have a festival. This is kind of the first version of this that we've had in a while. And if it's good, and really great comics come and are excited to do it and tell other comics, this is great. It's really good for the scene as far as like getting other attention and other industry and stuff here. And so I've been excited about them doing this, the Upper Left, since they started. And they had me on the first one, which was 2 years ago. So this is the third one, I think. And so, I really support it. And being one of the few local comics that is full time, it seems that they enjoy having me be a part of it. And so I'm all on board for it to continue. And I think it's just good for the comedy scene to have a festival like this.
Now you mentioned, and let's discuss this. So I'm looking at your bio on the Upper Left site right now, and I've got a couple general comedy questions. But why do you think comedy does so well on albums? Because like as a kid growing up, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Steve Martin, they always put out albums, and they always, when they were successful, they were just as big as an album by Led Zeppelin. Yeah. Okay. I'm really aging myself here, but okay.
We know. That's okay.
But why do you think comedy does well in that format?
That's really an interesting question. I always feel like when I'm listening to an album, I feel in the grip. I don't like it's. Yeah. I don't know if I feel like that with music, but the idea that you can just put something on and laugh is that's not always the case with anything else. It's, I don't know. I've always thought it was kind of weird to do albums, and people, like now there's a lot more specials and stuff where, you want video with it or whatever. But I think albums are really, I don't even know whose idea it was to do a comedy album first, but they really nailed it. It's a good, you want to feel like you're there. I don't know.
Well, okay, back in the 70s, it wasn't like we had Netflix, so we could watch the 800 comedy specials that Netflix has at any given right, and everybody has a YouTube channel and all that. So if I wanted to see, George Carlin or hear George Carlin, that was the easy way. But to me, there's something like when I'm watching a Netflix special insert name of comedian here. I'm trying to think. The last one I watched was probably Chappelle, one of Chappelle's things. Okay. I'm distracted. The dog walks in, the cat jumps on my lap. My wife says something,
Yeah.
you know, I don't feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
But if I'm listening to a comedian with headphones on or in my car, I think it is a more of a like a substitute for being present at the show.
Yeah.
But what I have to ask you is, what's a comedic guided meditation album? Come on. What is that?
You know, it's that's a great question. But so I did a meditation album. I was doing meditations on YouTube, like just with stock footage, which was like my favorite thing to do, is edit stock footage together.
Okay.
Some calming music, but then it was like, honestly, they're still like really calming and like can be motivational, but they're like dirty and full of jokes. And yeah, I think I described it on stage as meditation with dick jokes. I think, yeah, like it's just, you know, yeah, it's dirtier than my stand-up, to be honest. But
okay.
So the album came about because people liked and I would do like a monthly meditation, and like this was for April, you know, and it was like 2 minutes. So then I had the idea to do an album that each track is like for something different. So it'd be like, you know, one's for relaxation, one's for before you're going to go to a family gathering, one's if you had a breakup, one is if you are sick, you know.
Okay.
So, and it's a 10-track album. I had a composer from Los Angeles that I had met while I was there do original music. So it's like great, beautiful music. And yeah, it's just kind of, which I think, like I had a lot of people when it first came out reach out and say like, I have ADHD and I can never listen to meditation because I get distracted. But they're like, with this, I'm like waiting to hear what the like joke is. And so it was making them pay attention more. And I was like, that's great. That was totally unintended. But so that, I mean, the idea of meditation is that you're either focused on one thing, you know, and that's it, you're breathing or whatever it is, and you're letting everything else kind of go. So if you're just listening, maybe the same as when you're listening to a comedy album, you're just there with the thing and hopefully not thinking about whatever's stressing you out or whatever, which maybe is easier to do when I'm going to say some dirty word or a joke or whatever. But it went well. Yeah, that one was number 1 on iTunes too. So
see, what I was wondering is if this was a byproduct of the Dumb Pitches podcast, if somebody's idea, and I was like, oh, I should do that. No, Dumb Pitches came after that. So that's, okay.
Yeah.
So how'd you get inspired to do, let's talk about your podcast for a second. Yeah. Why and how?
The idea mostly came because during COVID, we focused on one thing, and that was YouTube. And so I wanted to do a video a week that was a little bit longer, and I thought this would be a cool way to do that. It wasn't actually intended to be like an audio podcast, but then Helium wanted to do it as a podcast, and I was like, okay, so, you know, we still send them. We're going to transition now into like doing seasons instead of like just every week, but so I'll be doing a live one at the upper left, which I'm really excited about, and we'll do 2 episodes because they're only like half an hour long, so we'll have 2 separate guests, and then those will kind of kick off this season in May of about 10 episodes. So, but yeah, it was just, I have trouble, and you see it in my stand-up if you listen. I want us to have fun and not think about how terrible things are and, you know, whatever you're stressing about. I want you to come to my show and go, you know, I forgot what was bothering me today for the hour and a half I was there or whatever. And so I felt like the podcast similar of like, let's just joke about some things. And I think some people can be intimidated by successful people and things they've done. And so I liked the idea of being like, well, tell me the worst idea you've had. Tell me what didn't work, you know, and let's joke about that. Or I just have so many questions. Sometimes I get really invested. I'm like, maybe we can fix it, or maybe this will work, you know? And we've had really funny, different, everything all over the spectrum from, you know, scripts or, you know, comedy ideas or songs. So I've had some musicians and stuff to all the way to like, you know, business ideas and inventions and personal choices of like, I shouldn't have dated that person or whatever, you know, it's kind of, I leave it up to them what they want to decide is a bad idea. But I've had a really fun time doing it. And yeah, so it started just as maybe like a content thing, but
right.
I have a good time. And then at the end of every year, we do what's called the Dummies, which is like the Dumb Pitches Awards. And so then they can choose categories, you know, for each, like, you know, best bad personal choice, best bad business idea. And so then people vote for, and then you can win a dummy. That's, I'm sure helps no one's career, but it makes me feel fun. It's a fun, you know, sometimes people do like a clip show at the end of the year of the podcast. Yeah. This is kind of a fun way for me to do that.
Do you give like like, is it like they get a little statue or something?
You know, I've always wanted to do that, or like do like an actual awards ceremony, like a live one. You know, we'll see how this live one goes. Maybe we'll do it at the end of the year. I haven't ever, like, I do the posts and stuff and they can show. And so some people get really like, they're like, oh, I'm so honored to be, you know, nominated and stuff, which is really fun for us. But yeah, I want people to have fun when they're watching or listening or whatever, and I want to have fun. So this is still, I think, really fun, and we'll get some ideas where I'm like, wow, this is weird, you know, or whatever. So it's fun.
Where, as a comedian, where do you get your material from?
I'm very, like, I don't even want to call it observational, but it's like, what is going on with me? What's, you know, I talk about being a parent, or when I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, I talked about a lot about working with kids, or, you know, traveling, relationships with parents, my family. I talk a lot, you know, I'm not someone who's like, let me read the newspaper and talk about what's going on in politics or anything else. Not because I don't think those things can be funny, but those are things that I don't want to be thinking about right now. So let me, you know. So
you make fun of kids instead?
Mostly kids. Yeah, it's mostly kids. If it's really the butt of the joke, usually.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
I know it changed.
Any parent that's offended.
Yeah. Well, I used to say, I mean, like, you know, relationship in general for a long time. I talked about being single because I was single for like 8 years. So that was my biggest, you know, there wasn't children around then, so maybe I didn't talk about that. But yeah. And me, like, as far as the actual like writing process goes, it's just things come up and I write it down. I don't sit down. Some people are like, I sit down and I say, I'm going to write a joke about wires. That's what I'm thinking of because I have wires. Anyway, and they make themselves do it. Every time I've done that, it's just not good. You know, like just the more relaxed I am, the more in, you know, like a flow situation I can be. Sometimes when I'm running, it comes up. A lot of times when I'm driving. And then, you know, right before you fall asleep or like in the shower or something, like those moments when you're connected more to your subconscious. I don't know why my subconscious is thinking of weird, silly things, but that's, you know, why not?
Because you've trained it too.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
Seriously.
I mean, so that's actually really interesting because I did a special this year. It was last year that was a holiday special. So it's all Christmas jokes. Right. And I would start to think about Christmas before I went to sleep, which maybe is a nice little meditation anyways. But so I'd wake up thinking about Christmas, and I wrote a lot of jokes during that time of like, oh, okay, I got to write this down. So yeah, there probably is a little bit of training, or at least nudging the brain in the right direction.
So you get inspired, your subconscious bubbles something up, you jot it down. Who do you try these out on? Who's the guinea pig that you kind of float these ideas by? Who do you trust?
I don't trust many people. No, I, for the most part, this is a weird thing. This is always a weird thing for me. My favorite artist is Florence and the Machine, and she's talked about how songs will come fully formed to her. Like it's already done. Okay. I feel like that with my jokes a little bit, where like I don't often change stuff once it's there, you know, like I'll do it. So there's not, some comics are like, I don't tell anybody, and then I get on stage and work it out at an open mic, you know, like that's how it goes. I'm pretty confident when I've already written a joke, but if I am gonna, is this, my wife has to hear so much stuff. I'm sure she doesn't want to hear it. She's like, and sometimes she like really laughs, and I'm like, okay, I know this is good, because she's actually really picky. And then sometimes she's like, I don't get it, or I'm not sure. And I'm like, okay, you're going to have to see it on stage. I've had that happen with her before, where I was like, I just told you this one couple of days ago, but then we're at the show and she's like dying. I'm like, why didn't you get that? I was like, I knew I was right. I knew there was something there. But yeah, she's the only person that really hears it. I know a lot of comics will like talk to each other and they do like writing sessions and bounce off each other. And that's worked for me a few times, but I'm not like as consistent.
But your stuff kind of comes fully formed. Then you take it to an open mic and see how the audience reacts, make an adjustment if necessary, you know?
Yeah. And then you can, you know, for me, cause I don't do a ton of open mics anymore. And that's mostly just a travel, like I'm actually working most of the time. So sometimes I'll fit them in the middle of stuff that's already good or already exists, you know, depending on the show or where I am, just to see. And that's the thing. When I write something new, I'm thinking like, where does this fit in my act right now? You know, where does it connect without tripping everything up?
Earlier on, I asked you what maybe the first joke you told, and you kind of, you know, conveniently blanked that out and repressed the memory. And then you've said through the years, you know, you some of your older, more, I don't know, older material, we'll just call it that, isn't in the routines today. How long does a routine last for? I mean, how often do you have to, are you refreshing it or rebuilding it? For
me, it's constant. It's, you know, because that's what I'm excited about. I think when you're doing less time, you know, when you first started and you're doing hosting sets, which are like 10 minutes or guest spots, 5 minutes or whatever, but I'm doing 45 minutes to an hour most shows. So not all of it can be new. I mean, that would be kind of crazy if you're like, I put out an album, now here's a whole new hour. So I'm always adding the new stuff as much as I can. And then you kind of rotate out what you don't want to be doing anymore or what doesn't fit that audience maybe. But for me, you know, I'm most excited to do the newer stuff and I'm having really fun doing it. And so I get excited to do that. And then I go, okay, here's one more, which I'm still excited about. But
but it's not the new shiny object.
Yeah, I hear myself say this stuff all the time. So.
Right. I can imagine your wife kind of feels the same way.
He's like, oh, she's back, so I'm going to go to the bathroom now. Which, that makes it sound like she's at every show. She's not, but she...
No, but yeah. Well, how do I want to say this? You travel the U.S., you're gone, you're doing 200, let's just say you do 200-ish shows a year. You travel a lot. So when you're not being a comedian, what do you like to do?
That is a great question. I think I'm still kind of learning that. Now, because, you know, I went from identifying as an athlete, which you spend most of your time training or thinking about it or doing something, especially, you know, as a college athlete, they were kind of telling us what we were doing all the time, to then a comic who didn't know how to not like put everything into it. And so just now I'm getting to a point where balance is really important for me and I need to figure out, I think it makes me better with writing and creativity if I'm not, you know, working and thinking about it all the time. So I have stepson with my wife, and so we do a lot of like, I just, you know, hang out with him. We go to the park, we do puzzles, we do, you know, watch movies together, and that has been really good for me to like kind of just not be in working mode all the time. And then I've, you know, I don't even want to call it that I moved back to the Northwest because I didn't live anywhere for the year before I came back up here. But there's a real reason I like being in Washington. I think it's just beautiful and I feel calmer here. Los Angeles I kind of felt dirty because it never rained. When I lived in LA,
smoggy.
Yeah, if it would rain, I would sit on our balcony and everybody's like, what are you doing? Why are you just sitting in the rain? I need this. I need to be cleansed.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
so I actually spend quite a bit of time outside here and not like, it doesn't really matter the time of year. So I try to run outside next to the water here in Tacoma almost every day. And, you know, in the yard, cutting the grass or whatever, just trying to be a human being that's not thinking about what's on the computer or what's on, what I need to do next for my career and who I need to email. I'm still working on it. It's still a very new thing to me to like be more intentional about what I'm doing with my time outside of work. But you're right in that, if I'm doing 200 shows a year and traveling, like that's a lot of time not here. So with the time that I do have here, I want to utilize it to the best for me and for my family. I mean, to be honest, they really like me. They're kind of obsessed with me. So when I'm gone, it's pretty tough. So when I am here, I want to spend my time with them. I want to actually be here when I'm here.
So I've got some Tacoma specific questions for you. Unfortunately, I know you're going to disappoint me on the very important question.
Perfect.
I know you are, because you already told me.
That's good. Well, if there's no expectation, then I'm not nervous.
Well, no, I still hope that you're going to answer it, even though you don't drink coffee. But if you and I were going to grab a cup of coffee or tea or some other beverage, where's a great place in Tacoma? Campfire
Coffee is they like smoke. See, and I'm not a coffee drinker, but I've just worked with them before, and they were such sweet people. But it's like they roast the beans with like actual wood or something. So it's cool. But then they have like the inside of their coffee shop is like camping themed. There's like camping chairs and like wood tables, like the like the big log table things and stuff. It's like pretty cool. Pretty cool place. And then I run at Ruston, which is kind of a new area in Tacoma. It's right on the water. There's a coffee shop there called the Jewel Box Cafe that I go to a lot. And that's it's really cool. Like the whole setup inside has like kind of woodworking benches and, like it's pretty and right by the water. I like that place too. So Campfire or Jewel Box.
All right. Where's a great place to grab lunch in Tacoma?
We're doing lunch. Okay.
We're going to do lunch.
Okay. Because that changes my answers maybe. I'm very partial to like the water areas. But there's a place called Stack 571. Is it 571? Down by Ruston, which is like burgers. Great, good burgers. I think it's like burgers and whiskey, but got waffle fries.
That's a good combo.
They have a lot of whiskey too.
Okay. Solid.
Yeah, but like good quality burgers with a brioche bun and stuff, all that. And that place that would be a good lunch.
Go there. Yeah. I've never heard of that one. Okay. Now I've heard of both the coffee shops.
I think it's like the smokestack that used to be down there.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was like named after.
Yeah, I think it's named after what that stack was back when it was a smelter and all that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What do you miss about Renton?
There's a bowling alley. No, I do actually miss the bowling alley. It's now like a grocery outlet. There's just something, and I'm sure people have this feeling about wherever they came from, but like, I'm still really close with a lot of people I went to high school with, because I feel like nobody else gets what you went through. Sounds dramatic, but you know what I mean? The way that it was being growing up in Renton. Now nobody knows either, because it's changed so much. I mean, Renton is a completely different place than when I grew up. And so I think probably I miss the people who were there, who were, who knew that you would go to Hillcrest Bowl and everybody's gonna be smoking inside, even though there's like a smoking section versus not. Got your thumb on there. And it was just kind of a rough in like a dirty way, not in like a scary way, if that makes sense. But like Renton was just, it was just different than it is now. There was no landing, there was no top close. There's no. Well,
so whatever. you're talking about Ruston like it's this new thing, and I remember it, belching smoke into the sky, and that the dirt was polluted, and there's arsenic in the ground, and it was a dirty, nasty, horrible stretch of the city, with an amazing view, because Commencement Bay, all of that was jaw dropping, but it was just, you didn't go down there because it was, you walk outside, you come in and you're like covered in arsenic, and your skin starts to bubble up, and it was horrible there. And now they've invested millions and millions.
Oh yeah, it's
hundreds
like
of millions of dollars.
Beautifully landscaped dune area that I run at every day. It's definitely not what
it's not. It's not what it was. It's just like the landing in Renton isn't what Renton was.
Yeah, that's where I learned to drive, because it was just an empty Boeing parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're, I think, maybe a couple years younger than me and then older, that's where you learn to drive.
Got it. Okay. As we wrap this up, I want you to tell the audience where they can find your material. Where do you like people to consume your content?
Yeah. Well, most things you can find on my podcast and stuff is wherever you listen to podcasts. Wherever you listen to this, you can find Done Pitches. I have 2 specials, and both of them are on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube, which is just youtube.com/Monica Nevi, I do have links to both of them on there. One is a holiday special if you're feeling like you need to get in the spirit. The other one is called Big Snap That Energy, and I did it with Helium Comedy Studios, but it's on there for free. Okay. But if you want to come see me live, if you want to come see me at the Upper Left Fest or anything else in Washington, I work in Washington quite a bit because I live here. It's easier to get places. All my social media is just my name, so Monica Nevi, at Monica Nevi on Instagram, and then my website is monicanevicomedy.com, and it has my tour dates and links to tickets and all that stuff on there.
And we'll put those in the notes. Awesome. Okay. What didn't I ask you that I should have?
I don't know.
That's the generic get out of jail free. Yeah, like, what did I forget? Cover for me.
Yeah, because then if I forget, it's my fault. But,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we did pretty good with the fest and everything too. So yeah, but good. happy to have people come see me. So
yeah. Well, we'll make sure that we spread the word for you. So last question. You ready? This is the one I warned you about. You have to answer this question, and it's one or the other, and you have to give your reason why. Okay. Cake or pie?
Cake or pie?
Cake or pie, and why?
Pie. For many reasons, honestly. I'm not a cake person. I'm not really a sweets person. And I feel like pie gives me a little bit, well, first of all, you do a savory pie. But I love the crust. I like a good crust. And then, maybe I feel a little bit more healthy eating a pie because it hopefully has some fresh fruit or something.
If you could only have one type of pie forever, what would it be?
My grandmother has always made a banana cream pie with like that Jell-O pudding, which sounds maybe simple, but I think there's a connection to it too, probably.
Okay, kind of nostalgic for you.
But I think also delicious. Banana cream.
Okay. All right, banana cream. All right. Actually, I lied. I do have another question for you that kind of ties back. It's about sports. It ties into perfect. Your collegiate. We're just bouncing around. Yeah. Collegiate athlete. You've been on Sports Center. The WNBA draft happened last night. Mm-hmm. I'm drawing a blank on her name. That was the number 1 pick. Please help me.
Caitlin Clark.
Is she the best college basketball player ever?
Oh, maybe. I'm a big, I think you need to win to be considered the best. Does that mean whoever's won the most is the best? I don't know. Is Brianna Stewart the best because she won 4? Maybe. I don't know. However, I think she took a team that probably shouldn't have been there and made them very good. So that would, would be harder for any really great player to do.
Right.
I also really consider what's going to happen next has a lot to do with her legacy. So she was a great college basketball player, got a lot of attention the last 2 years. I think continuing to be a great player on different teams will kind of give us a better understanding of who she is overall as a player. I think she was having to do a lot on that team on Iowa, and it gave her the opportunity to score a lot or to, have to really carry a lot of the load. So I'm very interested to see if she can relax a little bit, what that looks like, and how, how great she can be with that or whatever. So I think, definitely up there for sure.
Okay.
Can we definitively say she's the best college player ever? I don't know, because it depends on how much you put on. When we go to hardware, it's Brianna Stewart. She won 4 championships. She was player of the year all 4 years. No one's ever done that. And I think you could still make arguments for, I don't know, Maya Moore, Candace Parker, somebody who's winning, Asia Wilson, somebody who's winning a lot, and things like that. But she's definitely up there, and I say that's what I'm saying. I'm leaving it a little bit open-ended so that people will continue to watch.
And that's a completely fair answer.
Yeah.
Did you see her on Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
I don't know what I thought of that, to be honest with you.
What did you think of her, this whole journey? Were you like, this is awesome, rooting for her? Were you like, she's getting a lot of attention, I want to root for somebody else? Were you?
No, I think typically I don't pay a lot of attention to women's sports.
Mm-hmm.
But I found myself watching, and I don't watch sports. I love baseball and I don't even watch, and I love the Mariners. I don't watch the Mariners. I pay attention to them like in the highlights. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in the women's season this year paying attention to women's highlights, especially during the tournament, which is something I didn't normally do.
Right.
I think she was great for the sport. Mm-hmm. I think if I'm paying attention to it, that means other people are too that weren't paying attention to it before. I think that is good. Mm-hmm. I got a little annoyed with her behavior sometimes.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to pat her on the head and say, shut up.
Yeah.
I just there was something about her demeanor on the court that I just.
Well, and I'll say this has never happened before from a media standpoint. So this is so much attention that no other player has ever gotten.
Right.
Or players. Right. This whole draft class is kind of crazy. Right. So no one's ever had to really deal with that. So of course you deal with it differently. I was annoyed by it by the end of it because I am a basketball fan. I play basketball. I love it. I love watching the WNBA. I'm invested. So then to have it really focus on this one person and be like, there's all these other great players who have been around for a long time. You don't know. There's stories. Right. So I was playing South Carolina in the final, in the championship. Asia Wilson, who has a statue in front of the arena, is not that arena, but in front of their arena is there. She just won the WNBA championship last year, and somebody's like, "Oh, you're tall. Do you play basketball?" They don't. There's all these new fans, and she's like, "Oh yeah, a little bit." She's literally the best player in the WNBA right now, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I've dabbled." So that part is a little bit annoying too, where it's like, you don't know, but I want you here. I want you to be fans. I want you to be invested, but you have a lot to really kind of learn.
And that's the way it's been for every sport as it's risen in awareness.
Absolutely.
For example, the Taylor Swift effect on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Same thing. You know, same thing.
Absolutely. And they got a lot of new fans too, so there's going to be a lot of questions. And I know that this season will be much different in the WNBA. We go to Storm games all the time, and I'm ready to have a lot of new, different people there. Probably going to be there when we play Indiana, because they want to see her and that kind of thing. Sure. And I'm not opposed to it, but it doesn't mean I'm not annoyed by it.
Right. But I do think it's good for the sport. I do think it's good to help that league financially to continue to provide opportunities to the players. Mm-hmm. I think it's good, that was it 14? What was the thing on Saturday Night Live that was 14.4 million people watched that game? Iowa and Connecticut.
Oh yeah.
And Michael Chase says that's 14.4 million. Then there's some truth to that. That women's sports doesn't get a lot of eyeballs compared to the NFL,
right? Historically,
NBA,
for sure, absolutely.
And I think it's good that there's more eyeballs, but it doesn't break my heart that she's not on the Seattle Storm. How's that?
Yeah,
I'm not I'm not going, oh, I wish we would have really sucked and had a first round draft pick.
Yeah, because I know a lot about what the Storm was doing and stuff, and there was no point where I was like, oh, I hope we get her. I just didn't feel like that. Like that's not,
right.
and not because I don't like dislike her or anything.
No, I just, yeah.
And we're gonna, Storm's gonna be back this year. They made some really good moves in the off season, and I'm excited.
That's
for what they're gonna do.
See, to me, the Storm, I identify Sue Bird with the Seattle Storm.
Yeah,
she's the Edgar Martinez, the Ken Griffey Jr., Sean Kemp she's the iconic figure of that team to me.
Yeah.
And like all iconic figures, when they retire, it's a period of adjustment.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, not even just being a good player, but she was the person in control of that team for 21 seasons. Like we never really had a Storm team without her, especially one that was successful. So of course there's going to be a point of adjustment. And last year we didn't even really have a point guard at all, which is the most important position in basketball. So now we do. And I think, I think we've made some good changes. Okay.
Well, see, we went way off the rails there. That's okay.
I know, and you asked me about basketball, and then I can just keep talking.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But listen, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I really think this Upper Left Festival is something that if you're listening to this in time, go check it out. Mm-hmm. Do you know, putting you on the spot, are they recording any of the, will this be available on video after the fact? Do you know? I
don't think so, unless it's, something specific, like my podcast will be available with video and everything afterwards. I think there's some other podcasts that they're doing, but I'm not sure if there's any. Okay. Usually you don't do like a regular show you would put out unless everybody wanted you to. But if it's like, maybe there's like a crowd work show or something you might do. Okay. But yeah, I think their social media might be helpful.
All right. Well, there'll be links there too. But anyway, if you're not listening to this in time to see it, go check out Monica's stuff online. Go see her live. Ask her about basketball. Yeah. And it's all good. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. I'm glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.